Hi everyone, welcome back to my Sinanju airbrush tutorial series, and I've made it all the way to part 11 now, so if you want to check out the other parts then feel free to check out my YouTube channel. There's a playlist there on Master Grade Sinanju, and if you want to check out my website it's gundammodelkits.co.uk, and once again everything is just neatly organised so you can find the rest of these series quite easily. Anyway, so in this episode I wanted to first of all just bring you up to date with how far I've got, so a bit of a work in progress, and also as promised from the last part then I wanted to show you the actual a demo of how I do panel lines and highlighting. So without further ado, this is where I'm at the moment. So this is my Sinanju, and if you just watch parts 1 all the way to 10 then you'll see how I got this far. And he's by no means done, but you know, he's kind of starting to get assembled and starting to take shape. There's certain things I've kind of finished, like the arms are almost done. I've done a few details here and there. It's still not completely finished. I mean, hasn't got any decals or anything like that, and it's still very glossy. So I've still got to do a bit more panel lining and a bit of edge highlighting, and then stick a flat coat on top. But as you see, it's coming along pretty nicely, although very slowly, and you'll start to see some of the details I've put in on some of the pre-shading and post-shading effects as I've described. And moving down, then this is the painted in a frame, which I describe all the way back in episode 1, so check that out if you want to see how I did that. And what's new is this shield. So you can see here at the top black, basically all the black bits, such as this top part of the shield and its chest. And I'm still being a bit lazy because of all the sleeves kind of gold highlighting you have to do, so I really have to be in the mood to do that, so hence why it's not done just yet. But here you'll see the shield is pretty much all done, the red parts nicely highlighted there. So the backpack, which I showed you last time round, is probably the only thing that's completely finished. So here you'll see, this is what I'll be talking about in a little bit, and how to do things like that, where you do the actual panel lining and the highlighting. So it just brings it sort of to life a bit better than otherwise. And what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to use this arm here, which is not quite done, but if you look, the differences between these ridges right here and these ones here, then you'll see a big difference in how they come across. So really it's just going to be a demo of showing you how to make this look like this. And if I just bring you in with a little bit more detail, so let's just grab this and show you what I'm talking about. So this arm here is pretty much just got the paint, and it's not really it's only got the pre-shading and post-shading on. There's no highlighting or panel lining on this whatsoever. And when I say panel lining, I do mean the term quite loosely, because as you can see there aren't really any panel lines. There's just a couple of holes here that I'd like to fill in with some colour, and you know, there's a slot there, there's a little thing there, and the two ridges. So really, when I say panel lining, I don't always mean, you know, I mean it quite loosely, and sometimes I'm talking about just highlighting edges and putting some details, or if you're into Warhammer models then it's what they call a wash. So okay, so we'll move on to that in a later part of the video, but I just wanted to make sure I give you guys an update on how my Sinanju is looking. Okay, so what tools do we need for doing some of this panel lining stuff? Well, I think most people will start off with these, which are the infamous Gundam Markers, and you can get them in all kinds of sets and all kinds of colours, but they're kind of expensive, and to be honest they're not that good to use. They're kind of They work okay on a bare plastic model kit perhaps, but once you start painting and all that, it's not the best thing to use. So I have this set because I started off with these and they've done their purpose, and every now and again I'll cheat and I'll use these because it's kind of simple sometimes, but not exactly recommended, but you know, they're there nonetheless, and certainly for beginners then it's definitely worth looking into these if you can find them. So secondly, I upgraded to some real touch markers, and these are actually very different to these. I mean, they're still pens and all that, but the difference is that these are more of a sort of water-based solution, and they're much more runny, and it lets you do some blending effects. These are more like exactly what they say. They're more like markers, and these are more like I don't know, they're more like kind of liquid paint, if you will, and then you put them on and then you can kind of rub them off, and they leave a little bit of a smudge and a trail of the colour, or you can just leave them alone, and they work a bit like these. So these are a bit more advanced, but still expensive for what they are, although these are quite good. So what other options do you have? Well, most people that have been doing modelling for a while, I think they'll the common consensus at least is for doing panel washes. So what that is where you're not really having a panel and you know, say here for instance, you're not just using you know, like if this doesn't have any panel lines, but if it did, actually yes it does. So these panel lines here, for example, so you're not just going around these with like a pen and sort of going over every single little nook and cranny and drawing them in. A panel wash is where you use a very, very wet paint with a paintbrush like this, and you kind of dab it on, and you just let gravity do its thing, and the capillary action and gravity will mean that it kind of flows all over into all these little crevices. So that's what we call panel washing, and you know, if you've done any kind of miniature figurine sort of Warhammer painting, then you know, they're really big on that sort of thing. So it's definitely, once you get used to doing it this way, it's definitely the easiest way, and it's my preferred way of doing any panel line. So with that being said, let's have a look at what tools we would use for that. So first of all, there's the brush, and really you just want quite a fine tip one like this. Alright, so there's that. And then really you can just use any paint you want. You can use the normal paint if you really want, or most people will paint in acrylics. So what we use is normally some enamel panel lines, so enamel paint, so you can kind of take it off, or the other way around, you use enamel paint and use some acrylic thinners. And the reason, I won't go into too much detail, but I'll do that in another video. But the easiest option, if you're not sure, is to get some of this stuff. So this is a Citadel paint, and it's a wash, which is from the Games Workshop line. And what this is, just, it's really simple. It's basically you're buying 50% paint here, because this is just paint mixed with water. So it's a very, very runny kind of paint that you can see here. So you can basically get your brush, dab into that, and just put a dot on where the panel line is, let it soak in, and then you can wipe off the excess afterwards. The other way of doing it is to use these, and you can get these from anywhere. They're just some very basic oil paints, and they come in these little tubes, and they're meant for you know, like artists and all that. And as you can see here, really, really cheap. So you know, this is basically the price of a Gundam marker, one Gundam marker, and you can get a whole set of paints which will basically last you probably a modelling lifetime anyway, so judging by how little you use. Anyway, so you would use, to use these oil paints, you can just squeeze a little bit out of the tube, and then what I tend to do is mix them with a bit of white spirit, and that way you can get the consistency you want, and it just lets it flow across the model. So I'll demo all this properly in a little bit, but I just wanted to make sure I explain how I do my, or what I use for my panel linings. And from a previous video, if you've been watching my quick tips and tricks series for the airbrushing, then I explain using these bowls, these dropper bowls. And what I have here mixed is I actually use my own panel washes, and this is kind of a water mixed with some clay solution actually, and this is completely water based, and you can very easily wipe this off with you know, either some cotton buds, or actually I'll just, while I'm doing that one, I can just show you. So you'll probably need a palette like this, and some cotton buds and just some tissue paper. So that's what I tend to use for my panel lining, and let's move on to how I actually do that.